Hello there, and welcome to another Wisdom Wednesday episode of the Alter Your Health podcast. I am Dr. Ben,
And I'm Dr. Susanna.
and we are both naturopathic doctors who empower you to heal yourself through whole food, plant-based nutrition, as well as mind, body, medicine. So today on the podcast, Dr. Susanna thought she would share a little bit about courage since she has been acting so courageously in her life.
Well, thank you, Ben.
Yeah, this was Dr. Susanna's idea for the podcast, and let's just go with it. Where does courage come from?
Well, yeah, I was kind of hoping that this would just be a fun kind of back and forth exploratory conversation because, yeah, the idea just popped up into my head today. Like, wow, yeah.
What was there before that idea? Like, what led you to think about courage or feel courageous?
What led me to feel courageous?
Or what led you to think about this topic of finding courage? And
well, I think it just occurred to me. You gave me some feedback last night, like, "Wow, Susanna, witnessing you deal with, X situation the way that you did. Like, I was really, you said, proud of me, proud of me. I think that's what you said." And I was just that was just kind of landing with me this morning, and had a moment of self-acknowledgement, like, wow. In the last few months, yeah, I do feel like there have been times where I've stepped more into acting from a place of courage, which feels a little bit newer to me. And really, I think kind of the point that really I'd like to make right off the bat is that I always thought that courage was something that I had to kind of muster up or manufacture. And what's really been interesting in the last few months, these kind of instances I've been in where I look back and see, wow, that was courageous of me to do that. It came easily. It came pretty darn easily for me to just step up and act from a place of courage. It didn't feel like something I had to come up with or manufacture from a place of intellect or willpower or anything. And so, just in my kind of reflection process, I've really been realizing that courage isn't something that we have to make. Courage simply is our default state when we let the fearful and insecure thoughts just fall away, melt away, float on by. And I think the biggest difference between, how I've been acting more recently in these situations versus in, my past is that I used to take my fearful thoughts a lot more seriously. I used to take insecure thoughts about, oh, I can't speak up because what's that person going to think of me? Or, oh, no, I don't do that. I'm a people pleaser. I don't confront people. And, really identifying with those fearful and insecure thoughts. And through this kind of understanding of mind, thought, and consciousness, I really realize how kind of silly it is to give fearful thoughts so much power and so much just so much value in how we live our lives.
Well, it's interesting that you're sharing these kind of, obviously you're not really identifying the exact examples of where you've felt courage come forward and where you felt yourself step into your courage, but the examples or vague examples that you're giving are around, and I know what they are, but they're around kind of these confrontational conversations where the difficult conversations. And I just think it's kind of interesting because obviously for some people, difficult conversations are not difficult. It's just they are more confrontational, and they don't allow the insecure thinking to take over the get in the way of them having those difficult conversations. And for other people, it's I don't know, going like traveling alone or something like that. Going to a party by yourself, like those. I've traveled a lot alone, but I don't know, going to a party by myself, like that would be something to really like challenge, and I got a lot of thoughts around that,
Mm.
the insecure thoughts about like what that would mean to like be a loner and stuff. But anyway, it's just interesting how like we pick and choose what's difficult and what takes courage, right? So that is an example of what has been difficult for you and has taken courage for you to step into. And it's just, I think it's just kind of silly or interesting to consider like what we create as like the thing that we need to get over.
Mhm.
And especially when it comes to these kind of mental blocks around like, oh, it's hard to have this conversation. We've got this narrative going. This is a difficult conversation to have. It would be hard to go to that party alone. I don't know if I'm up for that, taking that trip by myself. These things that we create, the stories and the thoughts and the insecure thoughts around. What I have experienced is that every time I kind of come up against that and just it's like, oh man, this is difficult. Like, I don't know if I can do it, but every time I come up against it and then I kind of just do it, nothing is ever as difficult or overwhelming or scary as my thoughts make it up to be. And it's this kind of the metaphor of the monster in the closet. You hear this like sound in the closet or something, you open the door and it's like the cat playing or something like that, or it's just like, I don't know, nothing, there's nothing there. It's just kind of all in our thinking. We create the big bad boogeyman scenario, and then of course it ends up being kind of nothing. And I guess that's the interesting thing about our thoughts and the insecure thoughts that we might have. It really is nothing.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I think you also bring up, that kind of that sticky circumstance that many of us can find ourselves in when we are up against the fear. When there's something that we think we want to do, but then all of a sudden we're held back by thoughts of fear or thoughts of insecurity or whatever it is. And, you know, earlier I was talking about how surprised I've been at just the ease at which the courage has kind of come forward without me feeling like I have to jump over this hurdle of fear. Um, but I would like to kind of address more of that, address more directly, that topic of when we do come up against the hurdle of fear, because it's something I'm really familiar with. I know what that feeling is. And I think that's just like a really great example of the body giving us really direct feedback. Fear doesn't feel good. I mean, that kind of insecure fear of, I don't know if I want to do this. I don't know if I can do this.
Yeah.
Like, it's not a good feeling, right?
Well, yeah, I mean, what's coming forward in me is this like fear is just information, or the like fear is a label of a packet of information that we receive. We label it as fear, but that which is wrapped up in fear is just information. And we're taking in information all the time. And then of course our intuition, if you want to call it that, our higher wisdom, um, along with our body sensation and physiology, is interpreting and interplaying, and of course our thoughts and our neurology is at play. And then we take this information in, and then like I just imagine like it going through computer software, and we get this feeling, call it a sensory feeling in the body, call it a feeling or kind of an intuition or a hit or a kind of resonance kind of thing energetically. I think it's both a body thing and a mind thing, for lack of a better term. And then our thoughts, like the human nature that we like, part of our human nature, our thoughts about that feeling are another layer. So it's just, so I like to kind of peel back the layers, or consider peeling back the layers. And it's just, we get to the kind of root of the the story here, and it's just like what we call fear or what we call insecurity is really just information. And if we can allow ourselves to see that as for what it is, then we don't label on all these thoughts and judgments about what it means to feel that way or have these thoughts. And then we can kind of just act in a way, and I think you were getting to the point like fear is like having that kind of like resistant response is a protective mechanism, right? Like if like sometimes I have I don't know if this happens to you, Susanna, but like I'll be riding my bike somewhere and I'm like, I think I'm gonna turn around,
Mhm.
like it's getting dark. There's obviously mountain lions all in the mountains around here and stuff. And sometimes I'm like, it's starting to feel a little mountain lionish out here. And it's just information that I'm taking in. Maybe it's smells, maybe it's just feelings, maybe it's just thoughts, pure thought. But in any event, it's like I could say, uh-oh, what do I do? What do I do? Or I can just like take that information in and respond in a way that makes sense, right?
Yeah. Well, I guess where I was going at first, with what I was saying is that getting that feedback of that uncomfortable feeling of fear, insecurity, um, to me, generally what it's come to mean is that it's just like my body telling me, "Hey, Susanna, look where your thoughts are right now. Like what insecure thoughts are you having? What fearful thoughts are you having?"
Mm.
It's that little poke of a reminder, like, "Hey, where is your thinking mind right now?" But maybe the best way to kind of articulate this is to just share my experience last night, where I have been working on a project with someone, and this person basically kind of just scheduled an appointment for me like really early the following day. And this was at like 9 p.m. at night. And I was, I had this moment of like, what? Like they scheduled me for like less than 12 hours away for an appointment. I mean, they didn't even like run it by me. They did it, it just
I
kind
wonder
of,
if he listens to our podcast.
well, it's okay if he does, but like I just kind of I was taken aback, and I really wasn't okay with that because I felt as though at least there should have been some communication about that before putting something like that on my schedule, or like signing me up, committing me to an appointment early the next day. And I feel like Susanna in the past would have been like, gosh, that really irks me, but I'm just way too afraid to speak up and say something about that, and I would just kinda let it go, right? Like, I would make up excuses of, like, "Well, I guess it's okay because then I'll just get it over with earlier in the day," or whatever, I would do mental gymnastics to make it okay, when really the truth was I wasn't okay with it. And I shared this with Ben, and Ben was like, "Wow, are you gonna say something?" And my immediate response was like, I don't want to say something because when I think about saying something, I feel that fear. I feel that hurdle come up. Um, and you were like, you should say something. And I kind of sat with it for a while. I was like, I'm just going to kind of like wait this out, kind of, wait until I get some clarity around this. And within a few minutes, all of a sudden the hurdle just felt a lot smaller, and I realized like what like what's holding me back from
Mm.
really, speaking my preferences, right? Like, is it really a big deal for me to just say, "Hey, I prefer it if
Yeah.
you would run things by me before"?
And if you never did, then of course you would just get walked all over. And like if you don't like stand your ground, not that there's like a competitive thing, but if you don't actually like claim your preferences, like you say, then your preferences will be determined for you if you
Mhm.
don't determine them for yourself, right?
Right, right. So, I just wanted to kind of share that experience of kind of feeling that hurdle and just kind of waiting waiting until some clarity came.
Mm.
And my experience when I finally, responded and said something wasn't like, all right, Susanna, we're gonna like muster up this strength to jump over this hurdle. It was like an action out of ease,
Mm.
because
Yeah.
there was an element of clarity around the fact that that hurdle was made up of nothing other than fearful thoughts, insecure thoughts, that if I choose not to give them value, they don't mean anything.
Right.
And they really did in time. They just got smaller on their own within a matter of minutes. And so that's kind of the point I wanted to really emphasize here, is that, like, just in the past, I really thought that courage was this muscle I had to exercise. I remember there was a time in med school, I was telling you about this, where I made a commitment every single day to do something that was out of my comfort zone. And what's interesting is I got into this routine of constantly challenging myself, and there was something really satisfying about it. Like, I kind of got a hit of dopamine from it.
Mhm.
I almost got kind of like addicted to it. Um, but once I stopped doing that, I really just kind of fell back into my same kind of, um, you know, timid, comfort zone ish kind of tendencies,
Mm.
because I felt like that was coming more from that willpower top down approach of, I'm going to manufacture courage by forcing myself to do it,
Mhm.
versus acknowledging where courage really comes from, which is that we are born with it. It is part of our true selves and true nature. When all of the chitter chatter, insecure thoughts fall away, what's left is courage, and what's left is whatever inspiration or motivation we need to take actions that really serve us best.
Well, I'm thinking of kind of the classic examples that I can't think of any one that I've been in personally, but the example of I remember watching a video of, I think it was someone who fell into the subway track during this, like when there was a train coming, and this
Oh,
person
yeah.
jumped into the track where the train was, like, encroaching very quickly, and the person jumped in the track and like helps yank this person out of this deep subway um, pit. I don't know what it's called, the tracks, and essentially saved this guy's life. And one might say that was a really courageous act. And generally, when these people who do these courageous acts are interviewed, it's just, oh, that was just common sense. It wasn't like, oh, I'm weighing my risks and my benefits, and I'm gonna, I don't know, should I do it? Should I not? It's like we are in that flow of inspiration, and we don't think twice about things that, and if we do think twice, like, that's okay, then that's not in our highest good to do. We just are following the flow. Um, and uh, so I think that, like you were saying, the courage is built into our true nature, and it's the insecure chitter chatter that kind of can create that veil, or that create that sense of distance from where our courage inherently is.
Yeah.
So it sounds like, in a nutshell, the other thing that's coming to me is, like, in a nutshell, it really is just a factor of expressing, feeling, and being our truest authentic self. And that it's like, it's always silly for me to consider, being more of who we truly are. Like, how do we do that? How do we be more of who we truly are? How do we be more courageous? Well, we can't be more of who we truly are. We're already fully ourselves, so it's more of a factor of kind of letting stuff go than creating something. And that which we're letting go is just the false self, the delusions, the insecure thoughts, which we've obviously brought up a lot, which is part of the human experience. But we can see through that, see through the delusion, and more clearly see our true self, and show it and express it in the world in whatever way is the most common sense way to do in any given moment. So that seems like the take-home message for me from you sharing your story.
Yep. Same here.
Cool.
Yes. Well, thank you everyone for tuning in for another Wisdom Wednesday. It's always lovely to have you with us. And I guess the one announcement I'd like to share is that I have started to offer mindset coaching calls. So if you're interested in one-on-one mindset coaching calls, you can reach out to us at info@alter.health. Any other announcements?
No.
All right. Pretty simple. So we'll see you next week for another Wisdom Wednesday. Same time, same place.
All
And
right.
I hope you have a wonderful week until then.
All right. Peace and love, you